Everyone, welcome to another What I Would Have Done Thursday, and today I'm going to be briefly discussing the film Fat Slags. That is one that I think is considered to be one of the worst. Um, it is actually a British film, and it tries to be comedy but fails badly at being a comedy. Uh, and I thought it'd be interesting to explore and explain exactly what I would have done with this film. And there's sort of uh, basic things that I kind of want to go through and expand on, but let me just get out of the way the fact that this film is very painful, at least for me to watch. Even watching just a review within it of itself is kind of torture because this film has been seen as one of the uh, prime examples of how not only do you not do a comedy, but not only how you not do a film. So, uh, one of the reasons why this film is so painfully bad is the two main characters. Now, the two main characters of this particular film are supposed to be based off of a British comic, so to speak, that follows two overweight women uh, in a certain area of Britain. And they are technically supposed to be uh, sort of the kind of epitome of uh, what I guess you would consider to be obnoxious and annoying, and uh, as a result, this is um, uh, what we get as far as actual characters within this film. And it really is what puts a dent in it, because these two are so annoying and they're very rude, they're very crass, they have no class whatsoever, and they are complete trash throughout this entire film. And they really don't necessarily really learn anything. It seems like they still maintain their same uh, attitude and personality, like nothing about them evolves. So that definitely, I think, needed to be altered. Obviously, these characters needed to be, I think, presented in a more likable way. And I also think that there should have been an openness to change with these characters. I think, lifting people up, especially with a story like this, I think works more to its advantage than sort of elevating their poor behavior. Um, so I think that's definitely one that they needed to focus on instead of trying to make them somehow this uh, over glorified, uh, over excessive figures, which is really what they do within this film. And I'll sort of explain kind of the plot behind the film. But really, just to get out of the way, these characters definitely had to have some alterations as far as their personality is concerned. And I think they could have still maintained the appearance of being overweight. Um, I don't think, I don't really have a problem with characters that are considered to be overweight. Um, but this kind of leads into my second point, in that a lot of the humor is not only gross, but it's very like it's throw up in your mouth, kind of just disturbing a little bit. It really is one of those films you just kind of have to see to believe, and as to how far they uh, push the bar down as far as comedy. And a lot of that, I think, comes by the fact that they rely too much on fat jokes. Um, there is a heavy emphasis on the whole appearance that they have and the way they kind of carry themselves. So I think that was also something that should have been discarded. And I think the fat jokes could have been a lot more subtle and definitely not as crass. And also, the humor could have focused on how they're sort of supposed to be kind of out of place as characters. Because the way in which this plot works with these two overweight women is that they end up being placed on a fashion show. And they end up being placed on a fashion show in probably the most stupidest way possible. Um, but basically, this guy manages to get them to be in the fashion show because he hits his head and then he suddenly falls in love with them for some reason. And he just decides to give them sort of a shot. And I guess he has really the connections to do that. And once they appear in the fashion show, they're like a huge success and they go on to make uh, a lot of money, and they also get a lot of praise. And this is again what I'm talking about of elevating these characters. These characters did not need to be elevated or given recognition or praise. You know, these characters needed to improve themselves. And this clearly kind of gives off the message that these characters, they can't do no wrong, no matter how horrible they are, and how trashy they are. You know, so I think had it been more focused on them maybe moving into the city or something, from where they initially were, and they want to be a part of the fashion industry. They're passionate about being kind of like designers and maybe also models or something like that. But due to their weight, they have issues in trying to find potential gigs to where they can actually be these fashion models and sort of be in fashion shows and do designer work and whatnot. Um, so I think having the focus beyond that would have lended itself to, I think, a lot smarter comedy. And, you know, it could really commentate on the whole concept of um, how fashion and people who are overweight have this sort of disconnect from one another, only because the industry is not so keen on featuring uh, people that are really overweight. And I think had they taken a balanced approach as far as the message, you know, like they take some steps to kind of improve themselves, and then at the same time, you know, um, improve upon the way in which they carry themselves, then we would have, I think, gotten something that was a little bit more uh, down to earth and a lot more engaging and interesting. And I think it could have played out more so as a dramedy kind of. Um, you also maybe could have commentated on things like anorexia, which again I think is something that is somewhat of an issue, at least within the fashion industry. Um, you know, you maybe could have had a character who suffers from that in the same way in which they kind of deal with their, you know, uh, with their weight, you know, like they have the same sorts of kinds of insecurities, I guess. Um, again, I think had there been sort of a more balanced way of approaching this whole topic, we would have gotten something, I think, definitely a lot more interesting and worthy of of cinema, or at least of filmmaking, um, because this is definitely one of the worst, I think, that's out there. And it did take me a while because I just when I saw the premise within itself, I thought, how could I even make this better at all? Like, how can I even go off of trying to think of anything that would be better? But I think now looking at it and looking at it in a more in-depth sense, I can definitely say that, um, had the humor been a lot more subtle and, had they just tried to make it a little bit quirky, had the characters been a lot more likable, had they commented on things like, issues of weight and uh, things of that nature and, insecurity and self-confidence and all that stuff, I think, again, that would have been a lot more of an interesting look into this whole world that the fat slags end up getting into. Um, and again, the title, even almost in and of itself, is pretty bad title. I think I definitely would have altered the title. Um, I think you could have gone tons of different avenues, but I think Fat Slags just makes it sound like it already sounds gross, like the title in and of itself. It doesn't sound appealing in any way, shape, or form. So I think they definitely needed to be a lot more. I think that he needed to be a lot more appropriate, I guess. Uh, and again, I think, you know, as to whether or not, and this is the thing too, is this is why I don't like the whole kind of political correctness thing, and why I think it doesn't work within this film is that, again, it's not to tell people at least what to do with their lives, but I think at the same time, I think we should acknowledge uh, the importance of having a certain level of balance and trying to take precautions that will allow you to fulfill things within life. And again, I think focusing on health um, and doing it in a smart way works better than, unlike what this film does, which is really glorify these women. Like, they make them seem like they're on top of the world, really, because they get everything that they want within this film. I mean, eventually it ends up sort of kind of falling apart, but at the same time, they just sort of end up where they were, and it really, at this and within the whole process, they don't really learn anything. I guess at the end they try to emphasize the importance of friendship, but again, the friendship between these two is really not that heavily emphasized. Um, because most of the time they're just doing gross stuff. They're not really kind of bonding or really having any meaningful dialogue. So, and again, I think you could have highlighted a little bit too of the friendship. Maybe you could have even had kind of a conflict that arises when maybe things aren't going their way or something, um, and things like that. Maybe one of them feels like, oh, I shouldn't have to lose weight, or I shouldn't have to do this, or blah 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 blah. And then the other one says, well, I mean, we probably should try to do something so we can, get the potential uh, shot at being in a fashion show or whatnot. Again, you could have played around with those ideas too. So again, I'm surprised that I was able to come up with things more so than I thought I was, but that's really, I think, the direction that uh, they should have approached with this film. Again, I don't think glorifying this kind of, being sloppy, being, gluttonous and lazy. I don't think that's a really good message to send to anybody, really. So again, that's just my thoughts though, and as far as what I would have really done. But I'd be more than happy to hear what anybody else has to say. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.